In 1955, a Pan-American flight took off from New York City, destined for Miami. The skies were clear and everything seemed routine, but somewhere over the Atlantic, the plane disappeared from radar. No distress signals were sent, no trace of the aircraft was found, and it was assumed lost forever. Families mourned their loved ones, and the case became one of aviation's greatest unsolved mysteries. But then, 37 years later, in 1992, the very same plane landed out of nowhere at Venezuela's Caracas airport. Air traffic control, confused by the plane's sudden appearance, couldn't believe what they were seeing. The aircraft, a vintage Douglas DC-4, looked pristine, as if it had just taken off hours ago. What followed was a sequence of bizarre and mind-boggling events arrival. When authorities approached the plane, they found something even more unsettling. The passengers were alive but disoriented, behaving as if they were still in 1955. According to them, only a few hours had passed since their takeoff from New York. They had no idea where they had been for 37 years. How could this be possible? Unraveling the mystery. As investigators delved into the case, several theories began to emerge. Some speculated that the plane had flown through a time warp, a rift in the fabric of reality. Others believed it was a top-secret government experiment gone wrong. What truly happened during those 37 years remains unclear, but one thing is certain: time, for these passengers, had somehow stood still. The hidden truth. Just when investigators thought they had hit a dead end, a cryptic note was discovered in the cockpit. The note hinted at something far more sinister: a covert organization that had been monitoring the flight. Was this plane caught in a temporal anomaly, or was it deliberately taken and returned for unknown reasons? The disappearance. 1955. On a seemingly ordinary day in July 1955, Pan American Flight 914 prepared for a routine flight from New York City to Miami. The aircraft, a Douglas DC-4, carried 57 passengers and 4 crew members. The weather was perfect for flying, and there were no signs of trouble as the plane lifted off from LaGuardia Airport. For the first half hour of the flight, all communication between the aircraft and air traffic control was normal. But as the plane soared over the Atlantic, something extraordinary happened. Suddenly, all radar contact with Flight 914 was lost. The plane disappeared from the radar screen without a trace, as if it had simply vanished from the sky. Air traffic controllers scrambled to re-establish contact, but all attempts failed. Emergency procedures were immediately set into motion. Coast Guard planes were dispatched to search the area where the plane was last seen, but no debris or wreckage was found. For days, rescue teams combed the Atlantic Ocean, hoping to find survivors or clues to explain the disappearance. Yet nothing surfaced, not a single piece of wreckage, no life rafts, no distress signals. The plane, its passengers, and crew were officially declared lost, leaving families devastated and authorities baffled. The reappearance. 1992. Fast forward 37 years to a sunny morning in Caracas, Venezuela. On May 21, 1992, air traffic controllers at Simon Bolivar International Airport were going about their routine when their radar picked up something unexpected. An unidentified aircraft had suddenly appeared out of thin air and was heading toward the runway. The controllers were confused. No flight had been scheduled in the area, and the plane's communication system seemed outdated. When they established radio contact, they were even more shocked by what they heard. "This is Pan American Flight 914, requesting permission to land." The voice on the radio sounded calm and professional, but the message was incomprehensible. Pan American Flight 914 had disappeared nearly 4 decades ago. Despite their confusion, the controllers guided the plane to land. As the vintage Douglas DC-4 touched down, it was clear that the aircraft was exactly as it had been in 1955. The paint on the plane was pristine, the engines purred smoothly, and the flight number painted on the fuselage confirmed what they feared: it was indeed Pan American Flight 914. But the true mystery had only begun. First encounters the passengers' confusion. Airport authorities rushed to the scene as the plane came to a stop on the tarmac. When they approached the cockpit, the captain, Miguel Victor Curie, opened the door and greeted them as if nothing unusual had happened. The crew and passengers, all in mid-20th century attire, were calm but confused about their location. They believed they had just completed a few hours' flight from New York to Miami. As the passengers began to disembark, it became clear that they had not aged a single day since 1955. Their clothes, luggage, and even newspapers found on board were dated to the year of their disappearance. What was most eerie, though, was their total ignorance of any gap in time. For them, no time had passed. But for the airport staff and authorities, the situation was far from normal. Panic set in as the passengers tried to understand why they were in Venezuela, a place far from their original destination. Many of them began to notice modern-day items like digital watches and advanced communication devices, which further heightened their confusion. The people stepping off the plane were not aware they had been missing for 37 years. The investigation a puzzle with no solution. As Venezuelan officials struggled to contain the situation, a massive international investigation was launched. How had this plane, which disappeared in 1955, reappeared in 1992? There was no record of the plane's movements over the last 37 years, and no evidence suggested it had crashed. Moreover, the aircraft had never been registered as found in any other part of the world. Its sudden reappearance in Venezuela raised many questions, none of which could be easily answered. Interviews with the passengers and crew yielded little new information. According to their accounts, everything had been normal until they hit turbulence shortly after takeoff. After that, they remembered nothing unusual until they were told they had landed in the wrong country. No one recalled anything out of the ordinary during the flight, and none had experienced any physical or mental symptoms to suggest anything was amiss. Bizarre theories and speculations. As the mystery deepened, a wave of conspiracy theories began to emerge. Some believed the plane had flown through a time warp or interdimensional portal, a rift in space-time that had suspended the aircraft in a different reality before allowing it to return to Earth 37 years later. Others speculated that a government experiment or classified military technology was at play, possibly involving time manipulation or teleportation. One of the most chilling theories suggested that the passengers and crew had been subjected to a form of mind control or memory erasure. This theory gained traction when a cryptic note was found in the cockpit. The note, reportedly signed by an unknown organization, hinted at covert operations involving the plane's disappearance and subsequent return. What this organization intended to achieve, or why they allowed the plane to reappear, was unclear. The shocking twist of vanishing act once more. As investigators pored over every detail of the incident, something even more unbelievable occurred. Just as suddenly as it had appeared, Pan American Flight 914 vanished again. During the third day of investigations, the plane, still sitting on the tarmac under heavy surveillance, disappeared without warning. No one saw it take off, and there were no radar signatures or signals from the aircraft. It was as if it had never been there at all. The passengers, however, were never found again. All records of their brief stay at the airport vanished, along with photographs and documentation. Witnesses who had spoken to the passengers began to claim that they could no longer remember specific details about them. Some officials even questioned whether the incident had occurred in the first place, though the media frenzy that followed left little doubt that something strange had happened. The legacy of Pan American Flight 914. To this day, the story of Pan American Flight 914 remains one of the most perplexing mysteries in aviation history. Experts and enthusiasts continue to debate what truly happened to the plane and its passengers.